Welcome to episode 36 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen. So, it's our first week of a new book, which is always exciting.
Yeah, and it's one of your faves.
It's true. I do love this duology, I'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. So I kind of wanted to get this book in before season 2 of Shadow and Bone starts, since I kind of think that season 2 is going to incorporate this story. Like, obviously, we don't know, and I haven't seen anything. It's just my personal headcanon.
Yeah.
I think it's going to follow book 2 of Shadow and Bone, but they introduced the crows last time, so I assume there will be another story with them, and I just think it kind of fits. I don't know. Like, the story in the first season of Shadow and Bone with the crow characters wasn't something that Leigh Bardugo made up. It was just something that they decided to throw in to like give their more depth, I think, and characters and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And also, like, I think we've talked before about how Shadow and Bone itself is not a super long read. Not saying that not a lot happens, but it's not enough to fill out an 8-episode, hour-long series each episode.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I think padding it with stuff from the book we're doing, Six of Crows, is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I do think that like this next season coming up is going to be book 2 of Shadow and Bone and this first book of Six of Crows. And then season 3 would probably be the third book in Shadow and Bone and the last book in the duology here.
Yeah.
Obviously no proof at all, but that's what I've decided.
Yeah. No, it tracks.
Yeah. So I guess I'll talk about how I first got into this book. I had heard about this book shortly after Shadow and Bone was first, like, I guess, being produced, maybe even was just being written as a show. So I knew I had to read that series before the show came out so I could watch the show. But I had heard about Six of Crows, and I kind of liked this idea of Six of Crows better than Shadow and Bone. But I had to read them in order because I didn't want to ruin anything. And like, I know it wouldn't have ruined much really, but like as you're reading this book and the next one in the series, you do get little snippets that would really tell you too much if you read Six of Crows first, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'm not there yet, but like I haven't really come across anything so far.
Well, just something about the main character in the trilogy. Like you kind of figure out what her fate is in this book.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, hope you've all read Shadow and Bone trilogy. #Kristen.
Yikes. Well, listen,
Yeah.
We know that I like spoilers, and we've already established this is not a spoiler-free zone. So, really, I mean, come on.
No, exactly. And like, it's all good. And some of it's not even really true. So it's kind of hard. Like, the story is actually more nuanced. If you go by what's in Six of Crows, you don't know the whole story of what actually happens. Anyway, I can't get into it without ruining it even more. So
you're being so cryptic.
Like, I can actually just tell you later because you don't care about spoilers. But after this, I'll tell you. But I just don't want to ruin it for everybody else.
No, that makes sense. It tracks. I feel like I'm probably one of the very few people who like spoilers. I keep telling people that I like Wikipedia stuff so that I can know what happens, and they all look at me like I am a lunatic.
Because you are.
So, well, maybe a little bit.
Yeah. So, Kristen, how did you get into this book?
Oh my god. So again, if you've listened to our Shadow and Bone month like episodes, I think actually those are episodes 9 to 13 if you want to go back and have a listen. So you actually gave me those books as a gift,
Mm-hmm.
and they stayed on my shelf for a very long time. Until I heard that the series was coming out. And like I said back in those episodes, that I saw the commercials for the Shadow and Bones show, and Ben Barnes is like one of the loves of my lives. Like, I love him so much. I loved him from
Narnia.
Narnia and Stardust.
Oh yeah, Stardust. Yeah.
Stardust is like it's so good. If anybody is able to get it and watch it, do it because it's amazing.
Is that the one that's a Neil Gaiman book?
It's a Neil Gaiman book, and it's got a huge cast. Like, it's got
Mm-hmm.
Claire Danes is in it, Robert De Niro, um Michelle Pfeiffer,
This is
who
impressive off
else?
the top of your head.
Charlie something. I don't remember his name. The guy who plays Daredevil. That actor. The guy who
Yeah.
plays Daredevil in the TV show Daredevil on Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He's in it. He's like the main character.
Cool.
Yeah. It's so good. It's like Ricky Gervais is in it too, just off the top of my head. Like, just, off the cusp there. So like I don't know why I'm talking about this, but it's amazing. So Ben Barnes is also in it, and I love him.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard he was going to be in it. So then I was like, oh, I'll read this book. And so that I, because I do believe in reading the book before you watch the thing, because the book is 98% always better.
Yeah.
So I read it, and I told you I read it. And then you told me that I need to also read Six of Crows. And you kept telling me that I need to read it over and over again. And I've just ignored you this entire time.
Yes. Yes, you have.
Yes, I have.
It's probably been a year since the show came out, hasn't it? Like,
yeah. No, I would say closer to 2 years.
Oh, really? Oh my God, my
I
brain
would
is
say,
broken.
yeah. And yeah, you've been telling me, I feel like even longer than that, like that I need to read Six of Crows. And it's funny because if you have not read Six of Crows, I suggest you do it, but also keep a very open mind, because literally the only similarities because like we've sort of already talked about it, but I was under the impression that, how do I explain this? When you were telling me and explaining to me about Six of Crows,
Mm-hmm.
and how it's completely separate from Shadow and Bone,
Mm-hmm.
I sort of, not that I didn't believe you, but didn't understand how they could be
So
completely
different.
how they can just be completely separate materials when they're based on the same world and same like states. And I just thought there would be a crossover somewhere. And then I saw the show
Mm-hmm.
and saw that whole storyline of how, no, like the characters don't really intersect, like the two sets of characters, like the Shadow and Bone characters and the Six of Crows characters, they don't really intersect much at all.
Much, yeah, but there's even less in the books than there
But
was in the show.
there's none,
Yeah.
really. Like,
Yeah.
there's virtually none in the books.
Yeah.
So like I didn't realize that it was a completely fabricated storyline in the show. Even though you told me it was, even though you said that doesn't happen in the books, I still sort of went in thinking, oh, maybe they just borrowed something a little bit from somewhere, or like, but no, it is legit entirely different. There is
Yeah.
not one thing that's the same except for the people. And even then, you're still missing somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody is still missing from the six.
Yeah, but he's going to be in season 2, which lends credit to my theory.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm reading it for the first time. Like
Yeah.
our go through here, I'm reading it for the first time. I will say there are parts of it that I'm finding very difficult to get through just because of my like, you know, uh I've mentioned that I have children, and there are parts that are I find very, and I'm sure you do too, like you have, you know, nieces, nephews, and stuff like that. It's just, I find some parts very, very hard to get through because there is talk of like, not child abuse, but
They're all children
children.
still.
They're all children and they're all getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So, sort of child abuse.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really good. Like,
Yeah.
I'm in it. It's just some parts I am finding really hard. Like,
Yeah.
very sad, obviously.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like the thing about reading the book is like, when I'm sure if you're a teenager and you're reading it, you're like, "Oh yeah, these people are 16." But
Yeah.
like as an adult reading it, I'm like, they're adults, which I know they're
Yeah.
not. It says they're
Mhm.
not, but I'm like, that's kind of how I see them. But then it does talk about their pasts, which are awful, also awful. So it's like,
Yeah. Well, but like there's the only reason why I also think of them in an adult way more so than a teenager way is because, I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. There is no way on the face of the planet, or maybe there is, I don't know. I just don't think there are teenagers that are that smart and resilient and like capable.
yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like, there's no way that teenagers would be able to pull off what they potentially, like, even just coming up with the idea.
Yeah.
And the, it's like with the whole like um Throne of Glass thing. And like Selena is like a genius at planning heists.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I that part is not believable. Like, I
Yeah.
can't imagine that Kaz is as genius as he is at planning heists.
Well, yeah, and like she was a notorious assassin before she went to the mine a year ago, and she's only what, 17 in the book?
17.
So she
Yeah.
was 16 at the time, so she was already notorious at 16. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I kind of just gloss over age a lot of the times in books because
Yeah.
I'm like, doesn't really make sense. But then I guess the other thing is maybe time works differently in these worlds and people grow faster. Maybe they're adults at 12.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, I feel at the same, like, I feel weird talking about, well, it's not realistic. And I'm just like, of course it's not realistic. We're talking about a fantasy world with magic. So
Yeah.
like, realism doesn't really factor in, but at the same time there are certain aspects of it that you sort of want to be believable.
Yeah.
And like, I don't believe a teenager would have the capability and the mindset to do that. Some of
Mm-hmm.
those things.
Yeah.
Some of them I believe.
Oh, for sure. And another thing I find hard to make it like make sense in my brain is like, I find once you watch media based on a book, it's hard to get the people out of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the actors in the show are not teenagers. So, like, they look like adults. So you think of the characters as adults.
Yep.
Just,
It's true, yeah.
yeah.
Although I will say, so the actor who plays Kaz Brecker was in this show on Netflix, like as a British, it must have been a very small budget,
Mm.
called Free Reign.
Okay.
And I always think of him, whenever I see him, I think of him in that more so as he played like a surly British stable hand who turns out to be a lord, and his name is Pim
Oh.
or Pip, or I think it's Pim though. Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the first thing I saw him in. Actually, it's the only other thing I've seen him in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't think I've seen him in anything, but he's good in the show so
He
far.
is very good in the show. But yeah, like, he's a full-on adult.
Yes. Yeah.
They're
Most
all
of them
full
are.
on.
Yeah.
They're all full on adults. Like, I'm fairly positive all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. The one who
Anyway.
played Alina is 27.
Yep. So
Freddie Carter is 29. He's who plays Kaz.
yes.
That's a
Good old
bit different
Freddie.
than that's a bit different than the 16 or
Except
17 in the book.
yeah. Yeah. But honestly, I'm okay with it because, like you said, they don't act 16, 17. Like we gloss over the age because it's not how we feel they would act as that age. So like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with thinking of them in those roles because it seems more realistic to me.
Yeah. I agree.
Anyway, down that rabbit hole, but
yes, that's how we do.
we'll get back on track now. Just a heads up, we are not a spoiler-free zone and things might get a little saucy.
Yeah, so about the book, back to the author. Leigh Bardugo is a best-selling young adult author. Her novels have recently been made into a TV show. She created what's called the Grishaverse, and it encompasses the Shadow and Bone trilogy, the Six of Crows duology, the King of Scars duology, and then she has 2 books of short stories that is also part of this Grishaverse. She's still writing more novels in the Grishaverse. She also has an adult novel, and I think the sequel has come out, which are completely separate, different world from this, that I haven't read yet, but I am hoping to get into soon.
Who's the King of Scars about? Is it about anybody that we know? Like, do you know?
Yeah, I actually read that one. I just haven't read the second book in the duology. King of Scars is about someone that you meet in the second book of the Shadow and Bone trilogy.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're into Shadow and Bone, check out King of Scars.
Yeah.
So the book that we're doing is called Six of Crows. You haven't guessed by now. I've said the name enough, I think.
Yeah.
So it follows a group of 6 teenagers in the city of Ketterdam, and they're about to go on an impossible heist. They are led by the charismatic and infamous Kaz Brecker. And they are hoping to make enough money to get out of Ketterdam or to sort of just improve their lives in the Barrel, which is sort of like the slums, gang-ish area of Ketterdam. So they're sort of all down on their luck, but all incredibly talented individuals. It's funny how that happens. Yes.
Yeah.
So we follow them on this impossible heist. It's actually a really cute like heist book.
Yeah. It's all like found family dynamic heist type jam.
Yeah. So yeah.
So let's get into week 1. So it's our first week with Six of Crows, and we're going to be doing chapters 1 to 7. So when I first read this book, I didn't really know anything about who the characters were because it literally just said, like on the back, I think, 6 characters. So I don't know if you were the same way, but when I read the first chapter, I was very confused.
Yes, 100%.
Because I was like, okay, we're getting right in this. This is one of our characters. And like, they go on a full on descriptions of who he is and what he looks like and like his hopes and dreams. And like, it's just so detailed. And I'm like, okay, I could get behind this person. And then they pull it out from under you.
Yeah.
So we'll get right in. It starts off with a character, Jost. I swear to God, I listened to the audiobook and it's just all gone from my mind. I completely forget how to pronounce his name. But anyway, I'm going to say Jost. He is a city guard, and he's making the rounds at the Hode House. This book is set in Ketterdam, which is across the fold from Ravka. The Hode House is a private property. They also have private guards too, but apparently, ever since an assassination of a councilman, the city guards are watching councilmen's houses as well. So, seems like it could be a bit corrupt,
Yeah,
to say the least. this Hode person has 3 Grisha indentures, and they're basically servants. So, like, it's a lot like a lot of books, like Throne of Glass, like Selena and what's his name, who she has to kill in the first book. Anyway, either way, they have indentures, they have to pay off, and it's probably the same kind of like they keep adding money on,
Yeah.
like boarding and food and everything like that, so that you can never pay it off type of thing.
Which actually, like, sort of is one of the first things that I noticed that, like, there's a very clear, it's sort of the good thing about reading Shadow and Bone and this one is that
Mm.
you really see, like, a difference in how Grisha are treated in each
Mm-hmm.
country. It's interesting to see how the Grisha are treated so differently. So in Ravka, they're like treated like, I guess, kind of like heroes. Like they're all soldiers, but they're treated very well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're all living the life of luxury, and then they take up like positions in rich households.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, they're indentured servants,
Yeah.
and they don't really have any rights at all.
Yeah. So in this house, there are 3 Grisha,
Mm-hmm.
which I think I already said, but Jost goes to where I guess the Grisha normally are, and Retvenko is a squaller who's there, and it said that he had fought for the losing side in Ravka, which I guess is kind of a spoiler um, of the trilogy. Sorry. But you don't know what side he fought on. So it's a spoiler, but not really. It's kind of like a little tidbit if you had read the book,
Right.
the trilogy. But anyway, um, he's the only one there. Enya is a Grisha that Jost has a crush on, and she isn't around. But Redvenko says that Enya is gone the same way Yuri was taken. So apparently Yuri was the 3rd Grisha that usually is there. Hode apparently took him, and then he came back sick, and now they say he's in quarantine, but now I guess Hode has come to take Anya, and Ravenko kind of believes that he's going to be the one that's next. Like, he's like, they're making them sick somehow, and I'm going to be next. He also kind of seems like he's a little bit crazy. um, from this small interaction.
Yeah.
Or he's just like, just fucking done with everything. Really, it could be a combination of both. So all the guards are then asked to report to the boathouse. So Jost has to go over there. Anya, and a young boy are seated inside what I kind of envision like an interrogation room. They say it's like a one-way mirror on one side so they can look in, but Anya and the kid and whoever else is in there can't really look out. So there's like a bunch of people there, all the guards. The head of this dog watch, which is the city guards, is there, or the captain of them. And there's like Hode, the owner of the house, who's a merchant, and then another merchant's there. So Jost can overhear like Hode and another merchant talk. And the merchant asks if this is wise. He says Anya is a corporalnik, and he says after what happened with the fabricator, I guess should he really be doing this? But Hode kind of cuts him off and says that Anya has a sweet disposition, and they're lowering the dose. And Hode does also say if this has the same results as the fabricator, he should be compensated though. And like Jost has no idea what they're talking about. So we obviously have no idea what they're talking about.
But we can infer a little bit.
Yes, yeah.
Like, if he feels like he needs to be compensated, then obviously his Grisha did not come out good.
Yes, definitely. It is a bit harder to infer when you know what happens. But yes, you can figure out that like obviously something happened with the first one, and if this one goes the same way, then he's gonna be out a lot of money because Grisha are expensive to keep in your household. So, and apparently they're giving them something and he's lowering the dose. So hopefully it won't turn out as bad, is his thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So they say the first test is starting, and the guard cuts this little boy's arm. And I don't know how old they say he is, but it sounds like he's probably like 8, 9.
Yeah.
He's like little.
And I think, don't they say that like he's still sucking his thumb?
Yeah. Joe
So,
says
like,
that he thinks he's a bit old to be sucking his thumb, but still, like, he's obviously not a teenager or anything yet. He's young-ish.
Yeah.
So yeah, the guard just slashes his arm with a knife, and Anya heals it because she's a healer. Obviously, they asked her to. And now they say with the parem. So it was clearly like a control test. So like the first test was to see what she can normally do without this dosage of parem. So the guard cuts the boy's arm again, and then he asks Anya to swallow the contents of a packet in front of her. And Anya, I guess, smells it and maybe tries it, and she asks if it's just Jurda, which I'm pretty sure we heard about in Shadow and Bone. If not, it is definitely in the second book, but it's a stimulant in this world, and it kind of like turns your teeth yellow, and like I don't think there are any side effects, but I could be wrong. It kind of just reminded me a bit of tobacco, but I don't know if that's
Oh.
what they're going for.
I took it more like a cocaine thing. Because
Yeah.
it's a powder. So I sort of just imagined it more like cocaine.
Yeah. Do you remember hearing about it in the first book of Shadow and Bone? No?
I don't remember. That doesn't mean it didn't happen.
No, I know. But in the second book, it's like I think somebody ends up working with it. So we hear a lot more about it. But I do think it's something that you ingest in your mouth and it turns your teeth. So it just, I was like, tobacco. But I don't know if it's supposed to resemble anything.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, this is different than regular Jurda. She gets like an obvious high from it, and they ask her to heal the boy, and she does it like so easily without even thinking about it, and like it's healed even more perfectly than the first time. So Hode then tells the guard to start test 3 and to cut off the boy's thumb, which is a bit insane. Like, couldn't they have got somebody else? Like, why does it have to be a child?
I think because the urge is there, right? Like, you don't want the child to be hurt. Like, if it's an adult, you could sort of be like, oh, well, if I can't do it, I can't do it. But, like, with a child, you don't.
Yeah, I guess.
And also, I feel like you could get away with paying a child a lot more because they did tell the child that the kid was going to get some money.
Yes, yeah.
So, like, I mean, to pay an adult to have their thumb cut off, you would, I think, need a lot more money.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so Anya, as Hode said before, has a gentle disposition, but like she isn't gonna let them cut the kid's finger off. So she instead turns to the guard and tells him to shoot the glass. And he does it. And this isn't something that like a normal Grisha can do.
Well, especially like she's a healer, right?
Yeah.
Like that is her role. She doesn't have any of these ulterior powers.
Yeah, like she can't control their hearts or anything. Like that's not her specialty. So it's like controlling somebody's brain basically and telling them to shoot isn't something that any Grisha can do, let alone a healer.
Yeah.
So Anya then tells them all to wait, and we're still in Jost's head. And he kind of just says that he's perfectly content to wait. Like all of his worries, all of his feelings and thoughts just leave him. And Anya takes the boy from there because she obviously didn't want to cut his thumb. And she kind of comforts him a bit. And then she tells Hode to come in and pick up the knife. And then we just immediately cut to Inej's point of view. And we lose that story for a bit. And we don't know what's happening.
For a lot.
Yeah, it is. Luckily, we get a bit of it this week, at some point this week. Anyway. In Inej's point of view, we hear about Kaz, dirty hands is what they call him. They say he doesn't need a reason. And
to be what?
He doesn't need a reason to do things. He just does things kind of be shitty. It's like the first impression of him is like he will beat people up for no reason and like he'll kill somebody just because and blah blah blah. And you can tell that Inej doesn't really believe that of him because we're in her head. She does say that like he does have reasons for everything he does. She just doesn't know if they're good. So she's kind of struggling with him as a person. And I think that kind of defines her relationship with him for the whole 2 books, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess she comes up to them all and she notes his crew for the night. And she says that Jesper and Big Bolliger are his seconds. And the rest of the members of the Dregs, which is a gang, are around. There's a lot happening, and it's like...
Yeah, there's a lot of places, a lot of gangs, a lot of people. Like, there's just a lot thrown at you.
There is, yeah. So they're all clearly part of a gang, which is the Dregs. So Inej, Kaz, and Jesper are 3 main people that we get in this scene. Big Bolliger is just a guy that was named that we'll get to. But then there are some other people with the Dregs, and I think a few of them are named, but they're not important enough for me to have written their names down. But we basically, I guess, they jump a bit all over the place. So now, I guess Inej is thinking, but we get a tiny bit more about the assassination that was talked about earlier. That Joust said was the reason why he's guarding Hode's house. So apparently, in the assassination, it was something that was impossible. So Kaz can't even figure out how it happened. And what happened was a Zemini trade ambassador apparently stepped into a washroom. No one went in after him, and no one left the room. But when they broke down the door, he was dead with a knife in his back. So Inej apparently went to check out the situation and see if she could figure it out, and she couldn't see any way that somebody could get in or out of that room. So it's really a mystery how he killed himself. Like, you're like, did he just back into a knife on the wall?
Yikes.
That would be awful. So now back to the present situation, I guess. They're going to what they call a parlay. So it's when 2 gangs get together to talk, and it's like a leader or a representative, and then 2 seconds, there are no weapons allowed, and it's just to talk, which the name makes sense. So Kaz and his seconds get rid of their weapons. Jesper, as anyone who's seen the show knows, loves his revolvers. Mm-hmm. So that is very obvious in the scene. Mm-hmm. Jesper kind of points to Kaz's cane and says, like, what about that? But Kaz says, they wouldn't deny an old cripple his stick, which was very Gandalf and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But I did still enjoy it. And Kaz says they're meeting Gels, and like kind of implies that he's very dumb, so he wouldn't know not to let Kaz have it anyway.
Yeah. Oh, you call him
I don't know what I call him.
Gels?
Yeah.
I call him Geels. I don't think it's right.
I don't know what's right.
But that's what I call him.
Gels is what I'm probably going to say.
Okay.
But yeah. Inej kind of mentions that everybody in her crew, and I guess probably most of the other crews, call her the Wraith. She's very silent and she sneaks up on people easily.
Okay.
We also get their motto for the first time, which we also had in the show, and it's no mourners, no funerals. And it kind of just means good luck to them.
Like, don't die.
Yeah, basically. And like one party will say the first part and everyone else will say the second part. So I guess the three of them are about to walk into it, and Inej feels like this is a trap and says that like it's a mistake, we shouldn't be doing this. And Kaz says like, of course Gels is up to something, like, but this is what Per Haskell wants us to do. And Per Haskell is the actual leader of the Dregs. But like he's kind of an old man and he's a bit out of touch with what's actually happening with gangs nowadays. So he doesn't realize that like things are a bit different now. But anyway, Kaz does tell Inej to keep an eye on the guards since Gels might own them. And then he immediately leaves without explaining to her why he thinks that or anything else about it. So Inej goes to climb up to kind of like see everything from above and watch for the guards, see what's going on. But she finds obstacles. So there's like broken glass and oil to kind of like slow her down. And it makes her smile because she only really signed up with the Dregs 2 years ago after her 15th birthday, which makes her 17, which is a bit insane.
A baby.
A little baby. And we also get that she used to do the high wire, which is interesting. She does make it up, obviously, around these obstacles. And she starts to watch everything unfold below her.
Can I just say that this part sort of I found funny because it seemed like everybody was in different spots and like potentially far away. Like she's on top of a building, yet she could still hear everything that was being said in the conversation below with perfect clarity.
I know. It was a bit odd. And I'm like, she clearly wasn't that high up, but in like my brain, I'm like,
she was at least like 3 stories up though.
Yeah. I don't understand. They must have been yelling, I guess. Maybe it's a very echoey place. I don't know.
I really like how Inej, like how happy she is that she finds like the broken glass and the oil and stuff. Cause she's like, oh, that means they thought about me and didn't want, like they're trying to stop me from getting up there. And it's just sort of like, can you imagine being 17 and being like, oh, you hate me? That's so nice.
That's so sweet. Yeah, it is kind of cute, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So another gang arrives as well, the Black Tips, and the leader, Gels, and Kaz kind of make small talk while the seconds pat the other teams down, basically.
No weapons.
Exactly. We also get that Kaz is 17, which seems like you shouldn't be the representative of a gang at 17. Seems a bit weird.
Another little baby.
Exactly. We also find out the issue at hand, finally. So Fifth Harbor is what the fight is about. Apparently, Kaz had the harbor dredged. and fitted out with wharves. So it's now like prosperous, where it used to just be not, I guess. You weren't able to, I guess, moor your boat there or anything, and now you can, so people are using it. So apparently all the other harbors are like fair play because they're probably kept by the town, but this one is literally one that Kaz has claimed for the dregs because he did so much work on it, which kind of seems as fair as anything else seems. So
yep, for sure.
We also hear about the Crow Club, which is the main club of the dregs, and we hear about pigeons, which is basically like tourists coming in, and Kaz calls them pigeons. Gels basically tells him that he has 2 of the guards on the roof, and their rifles are at Kaz now. And Inej is pissed because she's like, does Kaz expect me to catch both of these people before they shoot everybody? So she starts basically climbing the walls like a spider, trying to get to one or both of the guards. But she's having trouble finding them. And Kaz basically tells Gels to like tell the guards to shoot him. And then when he says that, Bollinger is shot. And Inej kind of notices that Gels is no longer like, he no longer has the swagger that he did before, but he tries to like act like this was what he wanted. But Kaz says that one of the guards, Holst, and I quote, has urges that would turn the stomach. So we don't get what that means ever, I don't think. Ew. But it sounds disgusting. Yes.
Yeah.
And we kind of get that like Kaz uses information in blackmail over money, because Gels paid the guards, but then obviously Kaz found something else, so they're on his side even though they got paid.
Yeah.
Van Dahl is the other guard, and just as Gels is about to yell for him to kill Kaz, Inej gets there and puts a knife to his throat. So clearly, clearly Kaz didn't have anything on this guard. So it's lucky that Inej got there in time.
Yes.
So all this drama, but then Gels pulls out a gun too, and Jesper, I guess, finally realizes kind of what's happening. He realizes that like Bollinger checked Gels for a gun, so if he was actually trying to find one, he would have noticed it. Like, you pat him down, you'd know. So clearly Bollinger is double agenting them, or whatever word I'm trying to say. Kaz kind of, I guess, explains how he noticed that Bollinger, who is normally his laziest bouncer, was starting to get up early, and like the black tips were throwing around their weight at the same time, and he could kind of tell that something was up, and you know that like he probably followed him around and a few things. Gels doesn't really care though, because he knows he can take Kaz down with his gun, but obviously Kaz has something up his sleeve because he is not worried at all, or as much as he should be. So Kaz ends up like listing an address, and Gels goes still because it's his girl's address. There's sirens in the distance, and Gels is trying to deny that this is like somebody he knows. And Kaz ends up like going into detail about the house and how 2 dregs are there to light it on fire if he doesn't like stop, basically. If Kaz doesn't come out of this alive. So Gels ends up standing down, even though he wasted like so much of the his gang's money to be there with the upper hand, and now he's going to go back to the Black Tips as a failure. And Kaz ends up breaking his wrist with his cane and says that, like, next time he holds a gun to him, he's going to break both of them.
Yikes.
Gels is clearly taken off guard by all of it, and Kaz kind of explains that he's the bastard they only manufacture in the barrel. He's not someone from the suburbs like him. So, like, we get a bit-ish about Kaz's history there, maybe. Kaz tells Bollinger, like, if he lives through this gunshot wound, he's exiled. And Inej kind of sees everyone leave Bollinger there and is like, she feels sorry for him, and she does feel a little bad because they were friends at a point. So she feels like she should help him, but she says her work isn't done and she doesn't have time for traitors. So she moves on.
Yeah. And, like, fair point.
Yeah. You can tell she has a bit of a conscience, and she's not really sure how she feels about all this, but then she's also like, he's the one that fucked up. Like, I got work to do. So we jump over to Kaz's point of view, and I guess he's leaving the parlay area, and he's greeted by cheers from the rest of his crew. But he can also tell that there's, like, fear. Like, they saw and heard what happened to Bollinger, and they know that he could easily do the same to any of them if they cross him, basically.
So just don't cross him.
Right? Shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, it's simple.
Jesper goes to talk to him, and he's annoyed that Kaz didn't tell him. And you can kind of feel that he's a bit worried that Kaz thinks he's dirty too. But Kaz is just like, there's a line of credit for you at the Crow Club. And he knows it doesn't, like, fix the situation with him and Jesper, but he also doesn't really want to. And it does give you a bit of insight into Kaz, like, and his outlook. Like, he only really trusts himself. Yeah. He doesn't trust Jesper enough to, like, tell him things, which is kind of sad. But,
well, especially since you're 17, you literally have nothing else to do with your life except for, well, what you're supposed to do with your life is, you know, like, have fun and talk to your friends about shit and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. See, it's a sad outlook that they've got going there.
Yeah.
I guess Kaz is kind of thinking to himself that he came to the dregs when he was 12 and he turned the gang around. Like, I guess they were just a ragtag of people, and he is the one that made them feared, and he gave them property and money, and he figured their shit out.
Yeah.
He's walking down the street now, and he knows Inej is following him silently, and he, like, finally can't really stand the silence and tells her to spit it out. And she asks why he didn't send anyone to the girl's address to stop the dregs that were there from lighting the house on fire. And he says he didn't have anyone there, and he knows Inej wants to think the best of him, but he doesn't really like that either. So he kind of just says, like, when everyone thinks you're a monster, you don't have to do everything you say you're going to do. They kind of just believe it.
True story.
He tells her greed is his god. And it kind of gives him a moment to think about, like, how Inej still believes in Suli saints, and how he loves to tease her about it and see the furrow in her eyebrows when, like, she makes a face at him.
Oh,
which is kind of a cute moment. He also thinks about how he bought Inej's indenture from a menagerie, and he says it's one of his best investments. And she really is invisible. Like, she has no scent, which is kind of weird. And she can...
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Like, she can get into anywhere and not be seen. But for some reason, Kaz can sense her, but it seems like he's really the only one. Like, he can tell that she's gone. He senses somebody else is near after she leaves and asks them what they want. And then they get close to him and he swings his cane out, but they're too fast. And somehow his cane goes through them like a ghost. Yikes. And he gets knocked out with a syringe full of something, which is sketch at best. He wakes up and he's chained to a chair in a room with a merchant, a medic, and some of the Stodwatch. And he recognizes the merchant as Vanek because of his like pin or something, like his like, I want to say like brooch. Anyway, it has a symbol on it, and he knows that it's him. They end up antagonizing each other a bit, and for Kaz, it's a distraction while he tries to break out of his chair. I don't really know why Vanek is doing it. He's like,
because I can, bitch.
Basically, it must be. Kaz ends up getting himself out of the chains and jumps at Vanek, but Vanek calls for Mika, who walks through a wall. And Kaz kind of thinks that he's still a bit drugged because he's like, what the fuck just happened? Like, Grisha should not be able to do that.
Yeah. Go through doors.
Yeah. They're not ghosts.
No.
And Mika's a tide maker. So like that mostly has to do with water from what I remember from the first book. Like that has nothing to do with walking through things. But Vanek kind of explains that this is Jura Parem's effects. And like we obviously know more about Jura Parem than Kaz. But Vanek explains that a shoe scientist sent a sample to the Merchant Council, and this scientist, Bo Yul Bayer, wants to defect. Vanek explains that they gave the Jura Parem to 3 Grisha, one of each order. So 2 of them were Hodes, and then Mika is a tide maker, was the 3rd.
Okay.
So the Parem apparently makes Mika able to change the state of himself and of other things from like solid to liquid to gas to solid, like however he wants to. So apparently in a Grisha, if they take this Jura Parem, it makes the impossible possible. It kind of like alters the way they think so they can do so much more. Mm-hmm. But in regular people, it's apparently lethal. So unfortunate for the regular Joes. It's not a great world for the regular people, seems like.
Maybe not.
Vanek then shows him a piece of gold that a fabricator made out of lead while he was using Parem. And he also says that like the Grisha that did make the gold isn't well. So he can't actually show Kaz like the process, because Kaz is like, this could be fake, this could be a piece of gold, like this doesn't tell me anything, it's just some gold.
Yeah,
but Kaz kind of looks at Mika and he, I guess, puts 2 and 2 together and understands that like clearly the Jura Parem like comes at a price. Like yes, they can do amazing things, but Mika looks sick, and obviously this fabricator ended up sick. So clearly something's going on. And obviously we now know how the councilman was assassinated. If somebody can walk through walls, they can walk through a wall and stab somebody. So Vanek kind of explains that this Parem can screw things up. Like people can just make gold and they can vaporize into vaults and steal shit. So it's like nothing is really safe. Like the economy will fail if people can make money whenever they want or steal money whenever they want.
So large corporations.
Yes. And Kaz doesn't really care. But Vanek does want him to rescue Bo Yul Bayer, which is the scientist. He was given asylum, I guess, by the Kirch, but something happened at the drop point, and the Fjordans ended up taking him, and he's now at the ice court awaiting trial. So Vanek kind of says that the council can't send people because it would be like really bad politically.
Yeah.
But Kaz is like, what do you want me to do? Like, nobody can apparently get into the ice court. It's never been done ever. So how is this 17-year-old kid supposed to do it?
Yeah.
But Vanek offers more and more money until Kaz kind of stops laughing when he gets to 20 million Kruge, which I assume is kind of like $20 million. I don't really know. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah. So Kaz is obviously worried because he's like, the ice court is well protected, but he's gotten into other places that were too. So like, why can't they figure out how to get in there? So he clearly has a high opinion of himself.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows he's going to need a specialized team for this, not just some of like the random dregs that are in his crew. So he starts to like think about who he's going to take. And he realized that like if he gets this kind of money, he could really start his own thing without Père Haskell like breathing down his neck.
Yeah. Making all of his executive decisions.
Exactly. So Kaz asks why Vanek wants him, and Vanek kind of tells him about a painting that was stolen from him that was well guarded, and he was told it was impossible to steal.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that like it was never sold that he knows of, and he says he thinks he thinks the thief took it to prove that he could. And they kind of have a bit of back and forth, and it's kind of like, obviously Vanek thinks that Kaz stole it, but Kaz is like acting completely innocent, like he didn't.
Yeah.
And Kaz kind of says, well, you should get whoever stole that to go to the court and steal this person.
Yes.
And I think Vanek was trying to get him to say something or like seem guilty. But anyway, it doesn't work. So Vanek basically tries to make the deal, but Kaz asks about the third Grisha. He asks what happened to the healer who had Parem. And Vanek takes him to the room we heard about in chapter 1. So Kaz had heard that Hode's house, had a plague, but now he kind of sees it all, and he is told that it wasn't a plague. He has nothing to worry about, but like obviously you'd be worried going into a house that's supposed to be quarantined. He sees someone on the floor dead, and as the reader, we can tell it's Jost. The rest aren't responsive, and they've been here for a week or more just waiting. So we also, I guess, Vanek figures out from the little boy that Hode had cut his own thumb off while smiling the whole time. Like that's what the Grisha made him do, which is
actually a lot better than what I thought
would have happened.
Yeah, like I thought she was gonna like carve him limb from limb, because
Yeah,
she tells the little boy, like, she's like, don't look.
and it seems very creepy.
It does seem very creepy. So I was like, oh, she totally butchered him and he's no longer alive.
Yeah.
That's not what happened.
No, and it's weird too, because then he says that like then Hode was just like waiting like all the other ones, and then they just like took him off to his country home with his family, and he's just there unresponsive and waiting. So like, very Akko.
Yeah.
Vanek then kind of explains that they found the body of the healer drowned in the harbor. So she tried to leave to go back to Ravka, but then she likely started swimming back to find more Jurda Parem, because it is apparently super addictive even after the first time
you
take it.
That's all it takes.
Yeah. So Kaz tells Vanek that he'll do the job, but for 30 million Kruge. And obviously Vanek is a bit hesitant, but then he shakes on it, because what else is he going to do? And Vanek asks Kaz why he wears gloves. And Kaz just answers he's sure that Vanek has heard the rumors, and we get a few of the rumors, but it's just an interesting tidbit about the gloves.
Yeah. So essentially, he's always got them on.
Yeah. So you'd think there'd be something wrong with his hands, but Kise.
Or that they would even be a bit smelly.
Yes.
He's wearing the same pair of gloves every day.
Yeah.
Anyway. So we start off this new chapter in Inej's POV. So I guess Kaz gets home to the Slat. The Slat is the name of their 3-story house that's in the barrel. So, like, do you see where I'm coming from when I say, like, there are all these, like, names of people and places and things? So, like, we've got Kaz, we've got his group, the Dregs, then we've got the Barrel, which is their neighborhood, then we've got the Harbor 5, then we've got the pointy hats or the black tips or whatever.
Pointy hats. Witches. We've got witches. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And then, like, I completely forgot that they were called the Dregs because I was like, oh, they're clearly the Crows. They're not. That's the name of the club. I completely forgot that the Dregs existed.
Yeah. And, like, even going more, like, so now you've got Hoda, now you've got Vanek, now you've got, like, whoever this boy is, boy ya boy or whatever.
I don't remember what you're talking about.
The guy they have to go rescue.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Boy ya boy.
Boy, oh boy. I was like, what? Boy, oh boy. Like, boy, oh boy.
Anyway, and just, like, there's just so much going on. It is a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they live in this house called the Slat. It's a 3-story house in the barrel. Apparently, like, Kaz spent his own money to fix up this house so that it's all nice and dry, even though in this area all the houses are poorly made. Inej has a room on the 3rd floor. She has a room to herself, which she really appreciates and likes. And then she sort of thinks back to, so I guess before Kaz left her to go and get kidnapped,
yes,
he tells her that she has to take care of firing some guy named Rojak, because he was skimming money. And initially, Inej was like, oh, "Why are you firing him? Just make it just punish him, and then let him keep his job." And apparently, he couldn't, because if you're a dealer and you're caught skimming, then you end up losing a finger. And he didn't. I guess Kaz didn't want to have him lose a finger, so he's just firing him instead.
Yeah, I think he says, like, if you lose a finger, you have to learn how to deal again, and then you can't pay attention to the people playing. So I guess you're not as good of a dealer. Don't really know.
Anyway, so apparently when she went to fire him, he didn't take too kindly to being fired. So he, like, confronted Inej and, like, sort of started to, like, get in a fight with her and threaten her. So she kicked his ass with brass knuckles, which I low-key sort of love.
Yep. Big fan.
And she sort of, like, admits that she has to take care of herself and, like, doesn't want the gang members taking advantage of her at all. So, like, she sort of goes overboard on purpose with any insults. So, like, anytime anybody does something minorly insulting, she, like, kicks their ass for it, because she knows that, like, they might go worse than if she doesn't.
Yeah.
And she says she sort of felt bad because her and this Rojak guy were on friendly terms before. Like, they were friends. And Jesper, I guess her and Jesper are sort of, like, together. Not together, but, like, just together. and he thinks that it's unfair that Kaz sent Inej to do his dirty work. And like, I don't know if I would agree with this. Like, what's the point of being the boss if you can't delegate?
It's true. Yeah.
And like, I know he's not like the boss, he still has one person ahead of him, but like, he's essentially second in command.
Yeah. And it seems like he probably didn't talk to the boss before he had this person fired anyway. So like he's clearly I would say the manager of this club. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know. I think he should be allowed to. Now, obviously, if like you're a dealer who's only been working there 3 months, do I think you should tell some other guy that he's fired? No. But like, you know, one of his closest allies, I I feel like it's not that unfair.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
So I guess we get back, like, so that was sort of an introspective for her for a little bit. And when I guess we head back to like the present, what's happening now. And Kaz is home and everyone wants to congratulate him on besting the black tips and dealing with Gels. And it admits that like nobody touches him, like not even a pat on the back.
Mm-hmm.
Because apparently that would be a good way to lose a hand. So we sort of know something is up here.
Mm-hmm.
So he sort of stops to talk. He goes into like Haskell's office. So Inej like goes into a closet that has a grate in the floor to like listen in on their conversation, which I remember doing at my nan's house. My nan had a bunch of grates because she had a wood stove, so she had a bunch of like small grates in the floor to like let the heat escape.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we always used to do when we were kids. Is we also used to like sneak in, and like one was under the bed, so you'd crawl under the bed and you'd look through the grate and listen to what the adults were doing. Anyway, so we learned that Kaz is the one that like sort of turned Inej into a spy. I guess you already mentioned, I think, that she worked in the menagerie before,
mm-hmm.
which is sort of like a brothel.
Yeah.
So I think she's quite actually impressive for only being a spy for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's not like it was something that she grew up with. Like, we don't know a whole lot about her backstory, but we do know that she had a completely different job originally here.
Yes. So Kaz and Haskell have a little conversation. Apparently Haskell is upset that Kaz dealt with Big Bulliger himself without consulting Haskell first. And this is actually, so like, I will say Kaz sort of reminds me a little bit of like Selena Sardothian a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's always like 10 steps ahead and he's not telling anybody his plan. And then when it all works out, he's like, this was my plan. Sort of like, so I think it's sort of similar to her.
Yeah.
So Haskell is pissed because he was like, you're acting like my opinion has no say so when it does. Mm-hmm. So like you need to be consulting me on these things. And like he says, like, I have to keep up appearances that I'm in charge. You can't go around like pretending you're in charge.
Yeah.
And he sort of says that like he admits like that he knows that Kaz has like a job lined up. And it's sort of like Kaz is like, well, yeah, I do have a job and I can do whatever the heck I want, but don't worry, you'll get your 20%. Mm-hmm. So like, what's 20% of 30 million?
6 million.
So he gets 6 million just for sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, can't really complain.
No, not even a little bit. He sort of then says like, you know, I'll be out for my job, but Pim can fill in for him. And that pisses off Inej because she thinks she should be in charge since Kaz trusts her more. So like, again, we're sort of getting a little bit more about their relationship. Like they're obviously close if mm-hmm. if she thinks that, you know, they have a lot of trust with each other.
Yeah.
So we learn that, like, she's also barely 17, has been out of the brothels for 2 years, but she still has, like, the scar of the tattoo on her body. After that conversation, Kaz sort of meets up with her, asks how the dismissal was. They go up to his room in the attic. So he's by himself up in the attic room. Apparently he seemed, well, not apparently. So to me, he seems super smart. It mentioned a little bit how he does the accounting for the Crow Club. And for the most part, he does it in his head.
Yeah.
Like, he does write stuff down, but it's really only to, like, have proof for, like, the bosses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, like, he's very smart, which, I mean, you have to be to pull off all of these plans and stuff like that.
Yes, that's true.
It sort of said how, like, he bought the Crow Club and it wasn't, like, a profitable business at all, but he used these, like, legitimate businessmen and their investments to refurbish it and make it profitable. He asks Inej how she feels about 4 million Kruge, so I guess 4 million would be her share, and that he has a job. So, like, I think she was initially pissed because she was like, oh, well, he's going on a job and he's getting this other dude to fill in for me. Like, why would it not have occurred to her first that he would have taken her with him?
I know. Yeah.
Like, obviously, if he has a job and he trusts you, he's bringing you, bitch.
Yeah. I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, wouldn't that be your immediate thought? Like, I don't know. She's clearly got some things on the go.
Yeah. He starts to get undressed in front of her, which is like, woo.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, like, full on, like, takes everything top half up. So he's, like, half naked. And even the gloves, like, he takes his gloves off. But again, like, his hands look normal. So, like, I guess everybody knows that he has a thing about his hands, but you don't see it. It's not anything visible.
Yeah. Well, the reader gets now that it's not visible. I don't think nobody else knows that it's not visible. Inej does, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is so weird.
Yeah. She's, like, getting all hot and bothered about his torso. Apparently he's, like, really nicely built. He says he wants to go speak to Jesper and Muzzin.
One of those, probably.
I'm gonna say Muzzin.
Okay.
So he wants her to go get them to talk about a job, and that they should be gone for about a month. And then this part I really liked. He throws her a ruby pin and asks her to fence it. So, like, they described it a little bit when he was kidnapped by that councilman. And, like, he remarked on the ruby pin.
Because that's how he knew it was
the councilman.
Yeah, he knew who it was based on that pin, basically.
Yeah, well, he stole it. Which I loved.
I know. I'm like, how good are you with your hands that you, like... And when did he do it?
Yeah.
Impressive.
So he then, like, she's like, what? Wait, what? Someone kidnapped you? And he's like, he just brushes that off. And then he's like, he asks her to get him a new hat and to move the painting under his bed to the vault. So he turns out he did steal the painting from the councilman dude. And had it just under his bed. Like, priceless piece of art under his bed.
Yeah.
So, like, he calls her the treasure of his heart. And I sort of wonder, like, was that supposed to be sarcastic? Or, like, is that real? Like, is she the treasure of his heart?
Yeah. That's a question. It's a question we all ask ourselves. I think he means it sarcastically, but I feel like in my heart, in the treasure of my heart, it has a kernel of truth.
Great.
Okay.
So after that sort of moment, we go to Kaz's POV. He goes out again, like, immediately. So, like, he went in, he got undressed, he changed. And I just think to myself, these are 17-year-old teenagers. They need to sleep. Like,
That's
they're not
true.
sleeping.
Nope.
So, like, he goes out and walks past the Crow Club, and he's like, oh, it's doing well. Like, it's 4 a.m. and, like, there's a lineup to get in. And, like, he said it took a lot of work to get visitors that far north. He passes by Pekka Rollins' place. Again, another name of another person. Which is called the Emerald Palace, which apparently is really ugly. It's like all green on the outside with these artificial trees decorated with gold and silver coins. And that pisses Kaz off for an unknown reason as of right now.
Yeah.
And he has to say to himself, like, brick by brick, which is sort of his little, like, mantra that keeps his anger in check. And apparently, like, he sort of thinks that that's the only thing that keeps Geordie's ghost at bay. We still don't know who Geordie is. And keeps Kaz from going into the Emerald Palace and slitting Pekka Rollins' throat.
Intense.
Yeah, he has some feelings about this person.
Yes.
So Kaz, like, sees these hustlers in line for the Emerald Palace, and he hired them to try and lure customers away. And it's something he does systematically to tear Rollins' down. So, like, he really hates him.
Yeah. There's clearly something happening here.
Yeah. So he, like, intercepts their Jurda shipments. He charges him access to the Fifth Harbor. He undercuts his rent and, like, makes it so that he has a hard time renting out his places. So, like, he just does a lot of that stuff to try and systematically tear him down. And it said that, like, he admits he wasn't even from Ketterdam when, like, his dad was a farmer, and him and Geordie had been 9 and 13 when they first came to town. Eyes wide, no,
Wide-eyed and bushy-tailed.
God, wide-eyed and innocent.
Hmm.
So, like, a lot has changed.
Yes.
That's not even that long ago. It's like, what, 6 years ago? No, 7 years. No, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
8 years ago. So, like, in 8 years, he's gone from, like, this little kid straight off the farm to what he is now. And we have no idea what happened as of right now.
Yeah. Seems sketch at best.
Yeah. So he thought to himself that, like, this job would bring him one step closer to destroying Pekka Rollins, but he knew that he would need a good crew. So he goes to this entertainment district with musicians and street performers and acrobats, and he thinks back to this moment he had with Inej. Apparently they saw these, like, jackal masks in a store window, and people use them to tell fortunes. Like, if they're going to tell fortunes, they put on those masks. And Inej, like, really hates them because the masks are holy and ceremonious to the Suli people. So that's her people, the Suli. And for people to wear them to tell fortunes is, like, kind of unethical, I would say. So, like, we're getting a little bit more of her character here. But he continues and he passes by all the brothels, and he says that, like, all the brothels are sort of themed and, like, cater to a certain type of girl, which I'm not here for brothels. I don't agree with them. I don't appreciate them, but I sort of like this about them, that they're all themed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I get
why.
what you're saying.
You know what I mean? I
It's
think
kind of like,
it's a neat idea.
Yeah, if they were consensual.
Yeah. So apparently where Inej worked, the menagerie, they catered all exotic girls. And, like, Inej had to sort of play up her Suli-ness and wear, like, these fake Suli silks. And then there's Tante Eileen. She's the woman who runs it. So he sees her and, like, she gives him the evil stare. She obviously doesn't like him. So he goes to the House of the White Rose, which is another brothel, finds Nina, or he's looking for Nina, sorry. She's with a client, so he goes up to her room to wait. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing there?
Seems creepy.
Yeah. But apparently there's a peephole from her room into another room. And I'm like, that's also creepy. I would not want a peephole if I was hiring a prostitute.
I guess that's the price you have to pay. Like, someone can pay to watch you and you can pay to do it.
I guess. So there's this like the peephole, and I guess Kaz uses the peephole and sees Nina, and she's not doing what I originally thought she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So she's actually working as a heart render in her red kefta. So I guess she's a heart render, so she can slow down or speed up the heart and like take away people's anxiety or make them not scared anymore, or make them really scared. So she can do that. Mm-hmm. So like she's got her hands on this random dude's head. They're being really still. And that's it. So like no sex whatsoever.
Yeah.
So like time's up. Dude says thanks and goes on his way. So like she walks into her room, sees Kaz there, and it's sort of like, oh, hello. Like she's not shocked that he's in her room at all.
Yeah.
So like she, like I said, her business is altering emotions. So I don't think she actually works as a prostitute at all. Like I think she only works as a Grisha.
Yeah, I think so too.
And she can also do like wrinkles and stuff because she's a bit of a tailor. Mm-hmm. So like if somebody has wrinkles, then she can fix them, but she's not great at it. Like it's a backup for her. Yeah. She sort of talks about how she sort of like, she says that she's indebted to Kaz's boss, and she's also only 17 years old. So like all these people are freaking 17.
Yeah, that's kind of wild.
Yeah. It makes me feel like really, really old.
Yeah, I don't think they had to be this young. I think they could have been older. I kind of ignore their age when I read this book.
Yeah. So she mentions that she grew up at the Little Palace, and Kaz sort of tells her about the Yurda Parem and what it does to Grisha, and what Vanek sort of said about like the boy guy and the ice castle, the ice court, and like he sort of tells her the story without telling her the plan. Mm-hmm. And I guess he's like, he wants her to go with them, and she says no because she doesn't want the guy to be brought safely to Ketterdam. She's loyal to the Grisha and wants him to die because this drug is insanely dangerous for Grisha.
Yeah, super unnatural.
Yeah, and she's loyal to Ravka even though she can't be there right now. Like she is loyal and doesn't want anything to happen. As they're sort of talking, she sort of realizes, because I know you sort of mentioned that to break into the ice court is insanely difficult. Mm-hmm. And it's almost impossible. Actually, it is impossible according to a lot of them.
Yeah.
So I guess Kaz, like as they're talking, Nina realizes that Kaz doesn't just need her skills. He needs someone else with the knowledge of the ice court. Someone she knows named Matthias Helvar, who is, as of right now, in jail. And I guess, like, him bringing it up and saying, like, I need Matthias, is sort of pissing her off, because she asked Kaz, like, a year ago to help her get Matthias out of jail, but he refused. Mm-hmm. But now he's going to do it because he needs him for something. Like, he's got something to gain for it, so he's all for it.
Mm-hmm.
And same man, I would also be pissed.
Oh, of course. Obviously.
Yeah. Like, and I think we can sort of already tell that Nina has a thing for Matthias.
Yeah. It's a very confusing, like, whole situation that they seem to have on the go.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess I feel bad for her. Like, she's been trying to get him out of jail for however long, and yeah, Kaz refused to help, except for now he's all on board. But she doesn't think Matthias is going to help him, and says that like he just wants revenge. Now I'm thinking, revenge for what?
Yeah.
So they get in a rowboat. Like, I guess he meets her later, and they get in a rowboat, and they go to an island called Terangel, or whatever. It holds the prison, which is called the Hellgate. And Nina sort of thinks to herself how much she hates Ketterdam. Like, she says it's like stinky and it's unorganized and it's just not a nice place. So I guess she really likes Ravka better.
Yeah.
They're wearing these weird costumes to hide their faces, but like Nina doesn't really know why.
Yeah, it's another Selena moment where you're like,
Yeah.
Selena started out there and you're like, he has a plan.
Yeah.
Won't tell any of us the fucking plan.
Like, I feel like this is going to be a lot of, they're doing this, but we don't really know why yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, the costumes themselves are like a really popular style that people wear if they don't want to be noticed when they're in the entertainment district. So Nina noticed that there's a bunch of other boats that are all going to the same place, and all the other people in the boat sort of land. Turns out, like, they all land and they're all there meeting members of the Dime Lions. So the Dime Lions are Pekka Rollins' gang. So everybody gets to the boats to the shore and gets out, and they all start passing somebody money, and then the Dime Lion, like, sort of guards, I'll say, bring them into the jail. And I will say, Nina's sort of like, why was that so easy? And his response is like, hey man, it might be easy to get in, but it is really, really hard to get out.
Makes sense.
I mean, it's jail. What do we expect? So turns out Matthias is in the old part of the prison where they house the worst of the worst. So I'm thinking to myself, like, what did this guy do?
Yeah.
So when they get to like the right section, there's this arena and a bunch of masked people. And then all of a sudden a prisoner is out there in the battlefield, I'll say, spinning a wheel and gets a symbol, and he's got this weird knife. So like it's apparently a desert lizard. The poison in its mouth is lethal. So like there's this gigantic, I think of it almost like an alligator, but like taller.
Yeah, I can see that.
Anyway, so we learned that this event is Hell Night. That's what it's called.
Apt name, I guess.
Yeah. So apparently it was started by Pekka Rollins like ages ago. Nina sort of said that like she knows who Pekka is because when she first got to Ketterdam, she was trying to deal with the courts and Matthias being in jail and all that. So even though she really wanted to go home to Ravka, she couldn't leave Matthias stuck behind in jail. So she stayed in Ketterdam. Pekka offered her a place with the Dime Lions, but Inej snuck into her room that night and she offered her a space with the dregs instead of the Dime Lions. So she took the dregs. I guess she made it seem like really cool. So she says that then she remembers, like, her mind is just all over the place in this section.
Yeah.
So she says she remembers the first time she saw Matthias. Like, he was super handsome and I think she thought he would rescue her from her life, but instead he's what's called Drüskelle, which is a witch hunter. So like they will kidnap Grisha, take them to the ice court, and put them on trial, and then they're sentenced to death.
Mm-hmm.
So that prisoner that was fighting the desert lizard did not kill the desert lizard. The desert lizard killed it, the person.
That's quite the sentence. The desert lizard.
Yes, the desert lizard killed the human that was fighting it.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, and then I guess the body got, I don't know if it got eaten or if it got disposed of. But next up is Matthias. Like, he came out to do a battle, and he ended up landing on wolves. So like this wheel spinny thing has like a whole bunch of pictures of animals on it, and when they land on one, that's the one they gotta fight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming this is not explicitly stated.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
So he walks out. He landed, when he spun the wheel, landed on the wolves. And Nina gets worried here because wolves are like sacred to the Drüskelle.
Mm-hmm.
And Nina was like, oh my god, there's no way he's going to be able to fight these guys, because she knew that him killing them would be a really hard blow and a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But she's like extra pissed at Kaz for like his thought process on what was going on here in this prison. Like, she doesn't like the idea of everybody having to fight. Not everybody, but like, she doesn't think that's a good way to live.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he does kick the wolves' butts.
Yeah.
Like, all of them. So Nina sort of thinks that he looks a lot different, but still super hot.
That's good.
So they sort of wait until when his fight is done, they bring him back to, I guess, the prison cell.
Mm-hmm.
And they wait until the crowd is distracted by the next fight, and then they go for Matthias. So they reach his cell, and Kaz sort of reveals his idea to have the dude Muzzin take Matthias's place for the month by giving him sort of pox, so you can't really see his face.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that sounds terrible to me.
Yeah. Like, I don't think you could pay me enough.
Nope. Not even a little bit. So I guess she has to make Muzzin look like he's rotting away with pox.
Mm-hmm.
So she has to wake him up, because in order for him to walk out of the jail, he has to be awake. So she's using her powers to wake him up, and he realized who she was and started to choke her out.
Yeah. Bit intense.
Bit hot, though.
Yeah. That too.
But like, he is really mad.
Mm-hmm.
He then all of a sudden we go to his POV,
which I think is necessary here.
Agreed. It's like, instead of just like a wild guy just randomly trying to choke you out.
Mm-hmm. We need a bit of information here. Like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah. So we skip to his POV. Apparently he hates Nina with like a lot of passion. Like, he really hates her. Mm-hmm. But he also really wants her, which I think is the only normal thing from the TV show.
Yeah.
He sort of said like he dreams about her every night, so he doesn't realize she's like legit there this time. So like, in his dreams, he says that sometimes he dreams of chasing her, she's running away from him, and he catches her. Other times it's like he said, sometimes the dreams suck and they're not fighting, they're, you know what. Ooh. Anyway, so he's trying to like choke her and kill her, but Kaz sort of convinces him that he's gonna escape.
Yeah, he kind of like, I think he like gets a pressure point in his arm to stop him from choking her. And then he's like, okay, we're escaping.
Right. Yes.
Fuck off.
Yeah, that's true. He's
Yeah,
like, yeah, stop choking her.
we're busy.
Yeah. So they escape through the animal tunnels where all the animals are brought up in the arena to fight. And he sort of, this is actually one of my favorite parts of this whole like section. He thinks of trying to escape and he sees Inej standing there and he's like, she's so small. I could tip her over very easily. Then I could be gone.
Mm-hmm.
So he tries to push her over and nothing happens. She like takes a step back so that he falls through, and I think he falls into the water.
Yeah, I think he falls down almost into like the ocean, basically. Like, it wasn't very smart on his part.
No, but I love it.
Yeah.
So funny. Kaz sort of was like, stop roughhousing back there, like almost like your like great Aunt Edna would.
Yeah. I'm gonna stop this car. You two can't behave.
Yeah, well, it's true. That's what it feels like to me. So he's like,
Yeah.
He's like, you two can't get along, then I'm gonna fix it. So to fix it, he has Nina put Matthias to sleep. Because why not? Right? Obviously, Matthias doesn't like it. Mm-hmm. He wants to kill Nina. So, like, the fact that she's the one putting him to sleep is, like, a really tough pill for him to swallow. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, she does, and we don't ever hear about it again. So when Matthias wakes up, Kaz sort of asks him, like, sort of tells him about the plan, asks if he'll help. Matthias says, no way, Jose. Yep. Says that he doesn't want to be a traitor to king and country, and he won't ever take any money. But he was like, but here's what I'll do. You let me kill Nina, and I will draw you a map. And I'm like, it doesn't seem like great odds to me. Yeah. Anyway, so instead, Kaz hands him some sort of like certificate or something like that. And it turns out it's a pardon. So it's a pardon from the government, essentially saying that if he was supposed to be in jail for doing this, he didn't actually do it. So you guys are good. Mm-hmm. And apparently, in order to get that pardon, Nina had to recant her statement. And it means that Nina will also go to jail for 2 whole months. So, like, not only did she have to recant the statement she made on human trafficking, she also has to go to jail for 2 months. But Matthias is, like, already thinking, she's going to go to jail, but it's going to be cushy jail. Like, she's not going to have to do the hard stuff I did. She's going to have, like, a bed and, like, her own bathtub and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And Cass sort of says, like, just imagine, like, if you're free, if you're set free, then you could be a Drüskelle again. And, like, you can finally, like, be a part of your culture again and that sort of thing. So I guess those things combined sort of made him accept the deal. Mm-hmm. So that's Kaz's cue to bring out all the other members of the team. So he reveals that he hired Van Eck's son, Wylan, to be the bomb guy. And everyone's like, why'd you hire this guy Wyatt? Like, this other dude is way better. And it's like, I can't really tell you why, but, like, it's because, you know, there are reasons.
There's always reasons.
Yeah, but, so, like, he hired this guy to be the bomb guy. And, yeah, like, everyone's like, why? And then he actually does tell everybody, like, it's Van Eck's son. And they're like, oh.
Mm-hmm. Like, anyway. He can't keep the money from us if we have his leverage by means of his son.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's where we end off for chapter 7 is Matthias like agreeing to be part of the group and part of the plan and meeting all the members of the team. So we have our 6 now, right? So we've got
Mhm.
Kaz, Inej, Nina, Matthias, Wylan, and then Jesper.
Yeah.
And Muzzin is just, he's fodder.
Yeah. He's getting some money apparently. I don't know who's giving up their share, but
Yeah. Well, but I mean, it could just be like maybe they'll give him a few $1,000s.
yeah. It's probably just little change.
Yeah.
At least he probably gets fed in the prison, one would assume.
Yeah, but it's such a crappy prison. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
Well, I wouldn't either, but yeah.
Anyway. So yeah, so we've got our 6 team members. We've got us a heist.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that about wraps us up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com. And be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Coffee and Co Read.
Yeah, so next week we're going to be reading chapters 8 to 19 of Six of Crows. So make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.